Thank you, Melody. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Laura, on the Moog for the first time tonight. Thank you, Anna, Evan, Brooks. I'm really grateful for just the way that we were just led so confidently. Worship has just been incredible over the past couple of weeks, and I'm just so consistently encouraged by Overflow. It's senior night, and I feel like, that wasn't very good. Overflow, it's senior night. Yeah, that's good. That's a lot better. We have a lot of people to celebrate tonight. We're going to do that a little bit more here in a bit, but I'm really, really glad that we can all be together tonight. It's crazy to me, and I know I've said this every time I've talked about it, but it's crazy to me that we are where we are in relation to the end of the semester. It feels like just yesterday I was standing here for the first time ever in my job talking about childlike faith on January 11th. It legitimately feels like yesterday to me. And something else, just kind of life update, as I'm like thinking about where we are in the semester. In January, when I started my job, I was like, all right, well, Maddie's pregnant, and we're gonna have a baby in June. But that is forever away because I have a full semester of a brand new job, a brand new thing to figure out and to be a part of. And Overflow, the semester is almost over, which means that my daughter is about to arrive in the month of June. And we had an ultrasound appointment yesterday, and the ultrasound tech, she starts the scan and she says, wow, there's a lot of fuzz on the screen. And we're like, what does that mean? Is the machine broken? Do we need to get you a new one? Not that we could afford that. And she said, no, she's got a lot of hair. And literally, like in the ultrasound, you can see the spiky hair, like getting ready. And she's still 2 months from being born, which is crazy. Her due date is moved up to June 14th for those of you that can just be praying for her and be praying for me, because I know nothing about having a baby. I was telling our interns earlier, I've never changed a diaper in my life. So I'm getting excited. I'm ready. I'm gonna be there for every moment, and I'm gonna learn along the way. As far as the message tonight, I'm not gonna lie to you. This has been a little bit of a tough one for me as I have been preparing and praying through it. And the reason is I don't want it to end. Like I don't want this semester to be a thing of the past. I have loved every minute of this semester. I've made so many good friends this semester. I've met so many of you. And I just consider it to be such a privilege and such an honor to get to do what I do week in and week out. So bear with me tonight, because this is a little surreal for me to kind of end the semester, especially on senior night, to give some of you your last message of Overflow. That feels really, really heavy. So I'm trusting that the Lord is leading the way tonight and that he is gonna speak, not me. When I was in kindergarten, my kindergarten teacher was named Miss Beatty, and we were really close. I was a teacher's pet, even in kindergarten. I was the first to nap time and the first up. And I remember we were like learning about the government, and we were learning about kind of some of the roles, like pretty much we were learning about the president. And my interest was piqued. I was like, wow, that sounds like a really cool job to have, like every other kindergartner or first grader, I guess, thinks about. And I went up to my teacher and I said, Miss Beatty, I'm gonna be the president one day. And she like gave me the best, I don't really remember it entirely, but I don't remember her being mean. I remember her being very, very gracious, like, oh, that's really sweet. That sounds like a very kindergartner thing to say. Well, if you know me super well at all, you know that I have not given up my kindergarten dream. And I still, for some reason, in the back of my mind, deep inside of me, believe that one day that might be in the cards of at least running. And I don't really know 100% why, and I probably shouldn't say that because this is being recorded. But I do believe that there is just a lot of potential in it. But long story short, the reason that this matters to the talk, when I started falling in love with the idea of being president, especially throughout middle school, early high school, I found a TV show that radically changed my life. It became the TV show I watched all the time. And don't worry, there's only one other person in the room that I would imagine has watched this TV show. I could be wrong, but I'm going into it with low expectations. The TV show is called The West Wing. Okay, so like 4 of you. Is that Peyton? Yeah, that was exactly what I was hoping for. She is just like a character in the show called Donna Moss. But anyway, the West Wing is centered around, obviously, the activity of the West Wing, of the White House. It kind of explores the life of the president. Yes, I know it's fake. I don't want to believe that it's fake because they're my people. I try to watch it every night, and Maddie, she just can't stand it, y'all. Like, she's like, no, we're not watching the West Wing tonight. And then the minute she falls asleep, I'm like, tab over, West Wing. But if you were to ask somebody who has watched it or who has enjoyed the show, if you were to ask them what is like a notable quote or what's a question that is asked consistently on the show, I think if I had to imagine, does anybody want to take a guess if it was a 2-worded question from the West Wing for the 3? What's next? That's it. You watch it, don't you? Do you like it? Oh, that makes my heart so happy. I've never felt more seen and known in my entire life. What's next? And it's what the president asks in every room that he goes into. It seems like every meeting that he leaves, he either leaves frustrated or excited. It doesn't matter. He's like, what's next? What's next? What's next? It's all the time. And I think about this when it comes to all of us in the room, especially to the seniors. When you start thinking about this question, what happens inside of you? Does anxiety kind of boil up to the surface? Does excitement come to the surface? Are you a person that asks this question all the time, like me? I love this question. It's full of hope and full of opportunity and full of promise. And a lot of times I can kind of get obsessed with the question. And what I've found is anytime that I'm obsessing over this question, I am missing who I'm becoming in the process. And the thing that I really, really, really want for all of us, whether you're a senior graduating in a couple weeks, whether you're a senior graduating in December, whether you're a freshman and you're kind of at the starting line of this whole thing, no matter where you are, even if you're not in school, I want us to get really, really good at processing the answer to this question. But I want us to be even better at how we process it. I'm not as worried about the answer for all of us because we're going to figure it out. It's going to be okay. We are going to make it. We have each other. We are a part of a beautiful, incredible church and an incredible community. We are going to be okay. But the way that we approach what's next makes all the difference. And I think for a lot of us in the room, we deal with a tension when we think about what's coming next or what's up next because we think about what is previous. We think about what's behind us, or we think about the person that we used to be. And we think what's behind us gets to control what's in front of us. And I have news for you. When you're following Jesus, the past has no authority. What has been has no authority. And I think that we've got to latch on to this, or else what ends up happening is who we have been or the decisions that we've made in the rearview mirror begin to call the shots for the direction of our life. What's happened for all of you seniors in the room, what you have experienced in college has no authority over what is to come. In a beautiful way, because God's mercies are new every day, every morning. God is constantly doing a new thing, and he wants to do a new thing inside of you. Does he want to leverage what you've learned? Does he want to leverage your time in college? Does he want to leverage the way that you have grown and been formed throughout your time at Overflow? Absolutely, 100%. But I think that we've got a little bit of work to do. If you think anything like me, when we approach the question, what's next? We've got to do the work to process it well and to chart a course to the future that God has for us. When I think about where we are going tonight and the idea of the future and the things that are happening in our life, I think about a pretty famous Bible verse that you have probably heard at some point. We can put this on the screen, Philippians chapter 1. We're going to be in the book of Philippians tonight. If you want to go ahead and take your Bible and turn there. Philippians chapter 1 is where Paul writes, I thank my God every time I remember you. And all my prayers for all of you, I always pray with joy because of your partnership in the gospel from the first day until now. And here's the famous part. He says, being confident of this, that he who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion. And I think that we read this or we've heard this, we've talked about this idea in conversation. If you've grown up around church or you have been, even in the life of our church, we have talked about this idea. That the thing that God starts in you, he is going to complete and he is going to bring to fruition. But when we miss the reality of who the guy who wrote this was, we miss a lot of the power in what he's saying. Because if we look back in history, if we were to actually zoom back all the way to the Easter message of our church this past Sunday, and just simply the celebration of Easter, if you were at home and you didn't get a chance to watch online, I would highly recommend you go watch our pastor Mike's message from Easter. It is so, so important. And the thing that he talked about is life-giving to somebody who grew up the way that I did, embedded in church. So I would highly recommend you go do that. But if we look back at the Easter story, Jesus defeats death. He walks out of the tomb. There's a lot of beauty around that part of the story that we don't have a ton of time to dive into. He appears to Mary Magdalene, and they have this beautiful, very, very personal exchange. It's really, really powerful. But then she goes and tells all the disciples. He ends up revealing himself to the disciples. On and on the story goes to where we have the first apostles that begin to build the church. And along the way, the church really picks up speed really, really quickly. And I think that the reason that the church began to grow as fast as it did is because it was based on the theology. It was based on the ideology that Christianity was built upon an event, the resurrection of Jesus. And it was solely built on that in the early days. As we talked about last week, if you were here for the final week of Yeshua, there was no Bible at this point. It was word of mouth. There was obviously the Hebrew scriptures that they had had for a very, very long amount of time, but it was the ground game. It was people in the community loving and serving and caring for people along the way. And the church grew and the church grew and the church grew to the point the apostles said, we need more help. So they appointed some people from their community to come help them. And one of the guys was named Stephen. And Stephen began to really be very, very bold in some of his claims. He was very confident in the person of Jesus, obviously, as he was appointed by the original disciples and the apostles. And things begin to kind of pick up speed. And Stephen begins to kind of get a bad rap with the Jewish authority. And they're like, this guy has got to go. So they begin to, he actually kind of, it's really, really fascinating. Acts chapter 7, he gives them a very, very long speech and really calls them out for a lot of things. It's really cool. I would encourage you to go see it. But Acts chapter 8, verse 1 says something really, really important that I think that we need to consider, especially as we approach the letter that Paul wrote to the church in Philippi. Acts chapter 8, verse 1. And it says, and Saul, who is Paul, approved of their killing him. That day, a great persecution broke out against the church in Jerusalem. And all except the apostles were scattered throughout Judea and Samaria. It goes on, it says, godly men buried Stephen and mourned deeply for him. But Saul, he began to destroy the church. Going from house to house, he dragged off both men and women and put them in prison. Saul, bad dude, unhelpful. He approved of the killing of an original builder and facilitator and caretaker of Jesus's church. And if you've heard the story goes on a little bit later on, as in Luke's recording in the book of Acts, to where Saul has this unbelievable experience on the road to Damascus, where he has a conversation, and it radically changes the trajectory of his life. And I wish that we had time to kind of work through some of the details of that story. But the moral of the story is if anybody has credibility to talk about transformation, if anybody has authority to talk about, I was one way and now I'm a different way, it's Paul, because he was beginning to destroy what Jesus came to start. And through that radical interaction, he became the person that would write over half of the New Testament. And he would go on to write the book of Philippians that we are going to be studying tonight. So when he says that he is confident that he who began a good work is sure to complete it, he means what he's saying. Because he has done the work himself of allowing God to do something in him that only God could do. What God starts, God will finish. You can write it down, you can bank your life on it. And I am living proof of this, and I'm so far from the finish line, but what God has been doing in my life is radically transformative. He's worthy of your trust. And I think that this can be a very, very encouraging idea, but the question becomes, where do I go from here? What does this tangibly begin to look like in my pursuit of trusting that God is going to finish what he started? So jumping back into the book of Philippians, back in chapter 1, verse 27, Paul says something really important. He says, whatever happens, writing to the church in Philippi, conduct yourselves in a manner worthy of the gospel of Christ. Whatever happens, not if this particular thing happens, whatever happens in your life, conduct yourselves in a manner worthy of the gospel of Christ. And if you read it like I initially read it, you're probably thinking, oh, this is Paul's call to perfection. Like, this is him going, you need to be worthy, you need to have your act together, you need to have all of the right answers. But I think that there's a deeper meaning. I think he is calling us to live the life that we were made to live. It's exactly what we talked about week 3 of the Yeshua series, that Jesus came to demonstrate a new way for us to live. But I think the word worthy points to our worth, that we can be invited as children of God to join God in his work in the world and in our lives. This is a common theme from the very, very beginning of the story of the Bible. God wants to do this with us. He wants us to co-labor with him in the building and the facilitation of his kingdom. So I think it's really, really important that when we read this, whatever happens, stay rooted in the gospel of Christ. Stay rooted in your value and in your purpose, because your value and purpose is found in the victory of Jesus. When you begin to look at the life of Jesus, he is constantly speaking value and purpose. We can put this on the screen, that your value and purpose are found in the victory of Jesus. I hope this gets stuck in your mind. I hope that for the seniors in the room, when you're in the job interview or you're kind of charting your course throughout the summer, that you would remember that your value and your purpose is not in what you do or what you contribute. It's in the victory of Jesus. Nothing else can support the weight of your life. We talked about this in the series of Yeshua as well. The only foundation strong enough to support the weight of your faith is Jesus. So tangibly, what are some things that we can apply to step in to our value and to our purpose? I've got 3 things that I want to slide across the table to you tonight. They all come out of the book of Philippians. We're not going to go verse by verse, but we are going to stop a little bit along the way. The first is to choose humility. This is a common theme of what Paul is writing to the church in Philippi about. He wants them to be humble. He wants them to value others above themselves. He wants them to take on the posture of a servant and to not think that they have it all figured out. But the idea of humility often becomes a race to the bottom, where we all have got to make ourselves sound like we're the worst or sound like the most humble. Oh, I'm not that good at that. Like, no, I'm actually worse than you because I'm trying to be more humble than you. No, that's unhelpful. I don't know exactly who said it, but I heard this quote one time that I have been so encouraged by. It's that humility is not thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less. It's not meant to be degrading to you. It's meant to put yourself in the appropriate place in the world that we live in. In other words, it's a way for you to solidify your value and your purpose with the love of Jesus. Dan Kent wrote an incredible book called Confident Humility. Disclaimer, I have not read the entire thing. A great friend of mine has read it with his team, and I have heard a good bit about it over the course of time. I was reading an article by Dan the other day, and he said something that is in the book that I believe to be so helpful in the way that we see humility. He says this: the humble person embraces the worth that God has secured deep within them, a worth that does not fluctuate and that does not fade. Why? Because we did not manufacture the worth. Because we are doing the work to receive worth and value and purpose solely from Jesus. And I think that when we kind of get into the rhythm of life, the focus becomes, what's next? What's next? What's next? What's the next opportunity for my success? And then once you kind of get into the work world, it all kind of becomes very naturally about how much money am I making, and how nice is my house, and how great is my car. And all of these different things begin to chip away, and you think that the more that you acquire or the more that you get to be an asset in your life, the more full that you will be, or the better that you will feel about your life. And I have news for you. That is untrue. It is not success that leads us to fullness. It truly is humility that leads us to fullness. Humility leads us to fullness. And we've got to root our humility in the person of Jesus. And we can't take that as marching orders to make ourselves feel bad about ourselves. We've got to take that and say, I am a child of God. And that changes the way that I see myself. It changes the way that I see my success. It changes the way that I see what's next. The second thing that I would love us all to do is to value healthy thinking. And when it comes to the wording on this, I think you could say it a lot of different ways. One way that you could say it is be picky about what you think. Because there's a lot of thoughts swirling around in the world that would love to control your life. This is not going to get easier, seniors, when you get out of college. But there is a ton of hope. There's a ton of conversations stretched throughout the Bible. There's a ton of great resources in the world today centered around how to help you think really, really well. Paul is one of these people that talked about thinking on a very, very deep level, very, very early in the conversation. Chapter 4 of Philippians, if you want to turn there, he says, finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, like that takes work to mine out what is actually true about the situation that I'm in or about the circumstances that I find myself in. Whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. And I think about Paul, like kind of saying that last part a little bit like, dude, sister, think about these things. Stop thinking about every single thing underneath the horizon and take your mind and pick up the value of healthy thinking. And I'm not standing here in front of you saying, I've got that figured out. I have a ton of work. If you were to talk to my counselor, or you were to talk to Clay, or you were to talk to Brooks, or you were to talk to any of my close friends in my life, they would, if I gave them permission, they would tell you, like, Carson doesn't have this figured out. It's not necessarily easy all the time. But that doesn't make it less our calling. That doesn't make it less our next step. We must do it as hard in order to achieve what is great. And I really believe that Paul is saying, you can do it. You're going to need people in your life. You're going to need resources in your life. You're going to need to take time out of your day and document what you're thinking and what you're struggling with and put it on paper to a point that you can see it, you can understand it on a deeper level. But it is possible. In the mental health series that we did in January and February, we had a whole conversation between Mike, Maddie, and I all about healthy thinking. There's a podcast coming out on the Overflow Unplugged podcast in the next week with a certified counselor named Dr. Chinwe Williams. She is incredible, Overflow. I cannot wait for you to be able to hear her. And she talks about some practical things that we can do in our approach of our mental health. Highly recommend that you listen to it. But an easy way to kind of sum this up is that just because you think it doesn't make it true. Not every thought that pops into our minds at any given moment throughout the day is automatically true simply based upon the fact that we thought it. And this is where the work has got to begin. That we get to say, we're bringing people in to say, these are the untrue. These are the thoughts that are not noble. These are the thoughts that are not excellent or praiseworthy. When I think about this, or when I think about myself in this way, or when I look in the mirror, I think this, and I need help changing the narrative in my life to come back underneath the authority of the gospel of Christ, where your value and your purpose is found. I think this is incredibly important. The third thing is to never lose hope. Very easy thing to say, very hard thing to do. And if I'm being really honest with you, over the past couple of weeks, this has been pretty hard because of some thoughts that got in my mind and wouldn't leave, because of the way that I was viewing myself and my contribution in the world. This began to be incredibly hard because I wasn't looking at the right thing. I wasn't having the right conversations. And if you're anything like me, what begins to happen is you begin to spiral. And you begin to go, am I made for this? Am I cut out for this? Do I have what it takes? And this is why I believe so strongly in it, being up here. Because seniors, if I can just talk to you just for another second directly, when you jump into a job or you show up at grad school or wherever you are kind of heading next, this is going to be a little bit hard. Because what happens when it doesn't all work out like you thought it was? Or what happens when your expectations are not met? Or what happens when you're not immediately as successful as you thought that you were going to be? What happens? Our hope begins to get attacked. Our joy begins to get attacked. Our confidence follows suit. And then all of a sudden, our whole world feels like it's a bit of a house of cards because we've built on unstable ground. I want to say this really, really clearly. Success was never meant to be the source of your joy. To add a layer to it, success was never meant to be the source of your hope. Success was never meant to be the source of your confidence. Why? Because your value and your purpose are both found solely in the victory of Jesus. And if we don't understand this, if we don't apply this in the good moments, because here's what ends up happening for me. I'll have a win, or I'll feel successful about something. And I'll be like, all right, cool, I'm doing really good. I'm really pumped up right now. I'm really, really excited right now because that thing went so incredibly well. And then that happens again, and then it happens again, and all of a sudden I'm building a mental pathway, or I'm building a habit in my own life to depend upon my own success or the thing that is going well in my life. Then it's like, God, do I need you right now? I'm doing really, really well. So it starts in the good moments. It starts on the mountaintop for us to begin to retrain our mind that our success was never meant to be the source of our joy. And does that mean that you can't have joy when things go well? No, of course. Celebrate, yell a little bit. I'm super loud. Like, be confident, smile, laugh, enjoy your life. But make sure at the end of the day that you're asking yourself, where is your joy sourced from? Where is your confidence or your hope truly sourced from? Because life is not always easy. And we all have different stories. A lot of you, when you're going home for the summer, the thoughts that begin to come into your mind are not hopeful. They're not joyful. Maybe, in fact, you would just rather not go home for the summer because of whatever is awaiting you back home. And here's the thing I would say to that is we want to be there for you through the summer. Make no doubt about it. Our team is committed to you, not just in the school year. We are committed to you all the time. But the reality is, us in the summer, we have an opportunity to say, Lord, I'm clinging solely to you. I'm trusting that what you are going to provide me in the midst of a circumstance that is not all that fun or all that helpful or all that hopeful. I'm trusting that you have value on me, that you have purpose instilled in my life. And I'm trusting that you're going to bring me through this. And I love the way that Paul talks about this. We're not going to put this part on the screen. He talks about this at the very end of the book of Philippians, and he's thanking the church that he's writing to for their contribution to him because they have helped him along the way. Jumping in halfway through verse 11 in chapter 4, if you're following along, he says, "For I have learned to be content, whatever the circumstances." This is really important because he is writing this letter from a jail cell. "I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do all things through him who gives me strength." And a lot of us have heard that last verse, I can do all things through him who gives me strength, before. But we may not have heard what came before it. Paul's saying that in response to, I've had some really, really hard moments. I've had some moments where I didn't know if the God of all creation was going to come through. I mean, thinking about his interaction on the road to Damascus and the things that he had come from, remember the beginning of the message. He approved of the killing of people who were building the church. The regret and the guilt that he must have been carrying had to be immense. But he goes on and he continues to thank them for all of their help in his troubles. And he says this, he says, "I have received full payment and I have more than enough. I am amply supplied." He skips down to the very end and he says, "And my God will meet all your needs according to the riches of his glory in Christ Jesus." I'll read that part again. He says, "I have received full payment and I have more than enough." And he's saying that directly about their contribution to him. But then at the very end of the page, he points it all back to the Lord, working through them to support him and to care for him and to help him along the path of ministry that he was on. And I think it's so fitting that we have this in the Bible right in front of us to be reminded by Paul's example that every time that we don't think that God is going to finish what he started in our life, every time that we don't think that God is going to come through, every time that we doubt the faithfulness of God, we find that God's faithfulness truly is more than enough. And I wish that I could tell you that I planned this semester to all culminate in this verse and at this time. but I can assure you that I didn't. In my time with the Lord the other day, I ran across that and I was so encouraged by it. Because when we met as a staff team in December and when we met as a staff team throughout January, we came around this idea that we wanted Overflow. We wanted this college gathering to step towards the more than enough nature of who God is. And here we are at the end of the semester on senior night. We were led directly to this idea that God's faithfulness is more than enough. That means that in the moments of defeat, in the moments of despair, in the moments of the anxious thoughts, in the moments of depression, in the moments of dysfunction in your family, in the moment where you find out what you got on one of those exams that you worked really hard on, every moment along the way, I believe Paul is trying to tell us God's faithfulness truly is more than enough. It is full and it is abundant for you by name right where you are. And I think if we were to have a lot of the seniors in the room come up on stage tonight, I think you would hear that as a consistent theme. I've heard so many different conversations of people essentially saying this same idea, that what God has been doing in their life, what God has been teaching them, and what God has been showing them truly is godlike. It truly is something that only God could have been doing and writing in their life. And that's why I love senior night, because it's an opportunity for all of us to see some people who are moving to a new season of life. They are stepping into the next of the question of what's next. They're stepping out of the boat. They're stepping into the unknown. And they're carrying their faith with them. And I think it's such a beautiful story that I believe will encourage all of us the more that we get to hear it. So we had a couple of our leaders sit down and begin, we had them do it at their house with their phone, answer some questions about what their time at Overflow has been like. And I think that it will really, really encourage all of us right where we are today. So let's play that video.
What is up, Overflow?
Hey Overflow, my name is Michaela.
Hi guys, my name is Maggie.
Hey Overflow, I'm Kirby Ann.
Overflow has certainly become my home the last 3 years in college, and I remember walking through the doors the first night feeling so overwhelmed by the amount of college students that were there and almost feeling lonely because I didn't know anybody, and I was in a place that felt so familiar, but I was so unfamiliar with this environment. And I just remember thinking to myself that I need to get involved. I need to be invested in this.
For many different reasons, Overflow has felt like a home or like a family in a lot of cases. Whenever I walk through those doors, and from the very first time I walked through those doors, I knew I had people that cared about me, and I knew that every week I was being contended for.
The people have definitely made Overflow feel like home to me, from my lowest days to my best days and everywhere in between. People are just willing just to sit down and just to listen and be there for you and just to love you exactly where you are in life. And it's honestly just people doing life with you. And so to me, it's definitely been the people that have made Overflow feel like home.
Enjoy every second of college. It goes by so fast. But second of all, to just be available and be ready for what God has in store for you. College can be really hard. It can be a super unique season, but it's also, I think, some of the most transformative years of our lives.
It's not normal that there's hundreds of college students meeting on every Tuesday and Thursday to talk about God. And really just to dive in, honestly, as well, because it wasn't until my second semester of my junior year that I really started to dive in, and where I joined host team and then applied for the leadership position and as an intern. And I really didn't see anything come of it until I started to put in as much as I wanted to get out.
You still have so much time to go deeper in your relationships, find mentors, right? Get connected into a community group. Try out leadership, try out church leadership. When you do those things, when you go deeper or just get more involved, you'll start to realize that, oh my gosh, Port City, Overflow, I have so much that I can learn.
Just get involved and start serving the church, whether that's through host team, OCO, production, or even communion groups. These 4 tangible ways are great ways for you to start building your community. It was that community that really pushed me to grow and deepen my relationship with God. And if you're scared to do that, then just do it scared. I was terrified the first OCO meeting I went to 2 years ago, but now I'm one of the leaders for it. So if anything, just take that leap of faith and start serving the church.
It's not too late to get involved. I promise you will not regret it. To get involved in Overflow or to get involved in our church in general. It's such a rewarding experience. You will be surrounded by this beautiful community. You'll build friendships. You'll be able to process things with people.
Don't let the busyness of school or work or other priorities distract you from finding who you want to be and how you want to live according to God.
Over the past 5 years, I've learned so much at Overflow. I've learned, the process of healing and how to step into those hard conversations and be vulnerable with the people around you. I've learned, that my confidence is from the Lord and to step into places and be confident because I'm confident in God.
The God that I get to serve is life-changing. Not only have I seen him change other people's lives, but I've seen him change my life.
My favorite part about Overflow has definitely been the relationships that I've made, from the interns that I lead with, to the host team that I serve with, to the guys in my community group that I just do life with. I know that a lot of these friendships are definitely lifelong friendships that'll go on past college, and just people that I know that I can always fall back on and rely on.
My favorite part of Overflow has been learning how to live a very meaningful life through my community of friends, teachers, mentors, and leaders alike.
My favorite thing about Overflow has been the opportunity to build deep relationships with all sorts of people. I've enjoyed so much being able to grow and learn from one another, but also being able to have people who can be there for me and I can be there for them.
That's it. Peace out, Overflow. 4 years, it's been a blast.
Bye, Overflow!
Jake, did you have to make us all get weepy during that moment? Can we celebrate the seniors one more time? If you are a senior in the room, if you're graduating here in a couple weeks this May, or you're graduating this coming December, I'd love to just invite you to stand where you are. I know it's awkward, but just embrace it. Just stand where you are. Yeah. Thank you, Jacob. Y'all can keep standing. Don't go anywhere. I'm really, really proud of you. And all of your Overflow staff is here tonight, Maddie and Zach and Clay, who have led you for the duration of your time at Overflow. And Jake and Jenna and I, oh man, we're proud of you. The people that you are, the people that you are becoming are incredible. Your faith is contagious. And the things that God is doing in your life, I'm so confident they are going to make a big difference in the world that we're living in. And I would love for just to take a moment for us to kind of come around them and to pray over them. And yeah, we're just gonna embrace it, right? Like, we haven't done this in a while because of COVID, and that's okay. Let's just push through it. So if you've got a senior standing around you, just stand up where you are and go to them. If you don't have a senior close to you, you can stay where you are and look their way. And I would love for us to just take a moment and to pray for them. And we can do this in any kind of way that feels most comfortable to you and the people around you. If you want to pray in the quiet of your own heart and your own mind, you can do that. If you want to pray out loud, or if somebody in the group wants to lead the group in praying, we'd love to just take a moment, and I'm going to be quiet. and for each group to just pray over each senior in the room. Let's do that together.